This is Frank at Korea, and it's going to be a video on diversity issues in the Republican Party. So like and subscribe, but most likely comment and hate below because I know it's coming. And don't worry, my fellow friends that are on the Democratic problems. I'm going to mention your diversity problems, but this is about a Republican video. And I would like my fellow Republicans and my fellow moderates and even some Democrats who are thinking, if Donnie Jingles is ever out of office, maybe I'll go back to the Republican Party or join the Republican Party. Come on, look at this video and hear where I'm coming from. So yes, does the Republican Party have diversity problems? Yes. Should somebody like me be its leader one day? I don't know. I think I could be its leader one day, but its leadership should not look entirely like me, but with more gray hair and bald or hair plugs. We've got a big problem with Hispanics, of course. This is not news. African Americans wouldn't even try. But before I hear a Cuban in South Florida saying, "No, we know that this is not a Cuban problem," it's most definitely a Cuban problem. Okay, 2012, you do statistical analysis, you can actually look at the numbers. Republicans did not get a majority of the Cuban vote. And while yes, the abuelos and the abuelas who have been here for 40 years, who left Santiago de Cuba and Havana, got the grandkids to not vote for Hillary in 2016. Not necessarily that they voted for Donald Trump. They just didn't vote for Hillary in 2016. That's not going to happen in 2020. That's definitely not going to happen and beyond. Because Donnie Jingles has done a lot to make people not want to vote for him. And yes, while immigration is not a Cuban problem, per se, it's still a human problem. And when you talk about building a wall on the southern border, that's not because you want to keep out Canadians on the northern border. It's because you want to keep out brown people on the southern border. And while thankfully, the Republican-controlled House and the Republican-controlled Senate hasn't given him that wall, okay? And while, in fact, it's been sort of sad to say that it's usually been Republican presidents with Democratic controls that gets the walls built. Yeah, that all turns around against Republicans. So yeah, the abuelos and the abuelas who are literally leaving this earth are not being replaced by fellow Republicans. They are being replaced by Democrats in those offices, and those kids are voting Democrat. We know this because in 26 and 27, even with prominent Hispanic candidates in South Florida against a sexagenarian who doesn't speak Spanish and a one-issue Democrat, they both beat the Cuban Republican because Republicans are just not replacing Cubans with more Cuban Republicans. They're being replaced with people who just don't care about the Republican Party. And yeah, and if you're Hispanic outside of Florida, South Florida, yeah, what's your reason for joining the Republican Party? Build the wall that doesn't really get you into the party. And yep. And yeah, when the President of the United States, when he goes through his, thank God they didn't get reelected, and two of the people that he chooses are Carlos Curbelo, Cuban from South Florida, and Mia Love, the triple female black immigrant from Utah, Mormon, I believe, as well. So that's like a quadruple. Yep, names 5 politicians, and one's black and one's Hispanic. That he's thankful they're not back because they didn't like him. Yeah, that doesn't exactly bode well with Hispanics and African Americans and because we've done so well in California, we're losing Asians, which used to be a reliable Republican voting bloc. Oh yeah, and when I see conservatives talk about why we should still be in Syria, I'm thinking, yeah, a lot of Muslims still want to be in Syria for no known reason. If the terrorists are gone, which I don't know, I kind of think they kind of are as much as we're going to do. But yeah, I don't. Most people are thinking, yeah, you're upset that he's leaving. This is one good thing that I think he's he's doing is leaving Syria. Yeah, you're just going to war with more brown people. And he's actually trying to stop a war with brown people. This is a good start. Let's get out of Afghanistan next. But no, our party is like, no, we should double down in Syria. Seriously? Not helping out with Asians either. The other democratic death that my party is feeling is with females. Yep. This is neither a news story either. And it was pretty stark, right? Because we didn't replace females with females. We did. We just didn't replace them with Republicans, right? Ros-lehtinen, again, gets replaced by a sexagenarian Democrat who doesn't speak Spanish, but is a Democrat in a district that she was elected for 28 years. And that's not alone, right? 80% or more of elected House, Senate, and gubernatorial seats that went to females were Democrats. Now, some of that is, if you have a female Republican against a female Democrat, a female's going to win. And in a wave election, where females are probably not, going, yep, party of Donald Trump, they might vote for Democrat. In that case, right? All things being equal, if they had an inclination to vote a female, they may go with a party that's not a Donald Trump. So that's just a wave problem. And don't worry, before you're thinking I'm just anti-Trump, I'm not necessarily. I am against Trump on most things, but the same thing happened in 2010. If you were an African-American Republican versus an African-American Democrat, and you were in a 50-50 district, right, you may have been more inclined to vote for the African-American Republican when you had a socialist-like Democrat in the White House, right? Republicans did slightly better with Hispanics and blacks getting elected with Barack Obama than they did without Barack Obama. But demographics is death. And when we do get a female into office, we treat her like absolute shit. So McSully doesn't win the election against her Democratic opponent, but the vacancy happens, and Ducey could have easily appointed himself, which is what he wanted. He wants to be the senator, right? He could have easily appointed himself, went against the entire will of the people who just reelected him for 4 years and said, I'm taking the spot. But no, he puts in Martha McSully, who voting-wise is close to John McCain, just doesn't like John McCain. And yet I'm hearing conservatives and people on the left go, you went against the will of the people. But I'm hearing conservatives going, oh, she's just going to lose in 2 years. She couldn't beat a anti-gay expletive. Yeah. And when it comes to female leadership, when they do get into office, like I said, it is a shit show. Elsie Sleniak, who is the representative of where I grew up as a kid, she's been reelected now, third term. She's still very young, okay? She's like 34. But in her third term, I don't see her anywhere going up in leadership. I don't see her as a ranking member. I don't see her as number 2 on a committee. Why? Young and female from New York, right? There's not a lot of them. Not a lot of young people, not a lot of females, and not a lot of Republicans from the Northeast. She can't get a leadership job. And Republicans used to kind of be the party for getting women involved in politics, right? Again, we don't like the word affirmative action. There's a difference between affirmative action and finding women for leadership. Because you need to have a woman doesn't have to lead it, but a woman's got to be in the room, right? You get, one of the things with the Me Too movement, right, is that you didn't have women in the room. If you had women in the room and they were dicks, then you're like, wow, that woman's a super dick. But if you don't have women in the room, you have a ton of problems, right? Because then you don't think about women's issues. And one of the things Republicans used to do is there used to be a guarantee that the chair, if it was one gender, the vice chair would be the other gender. It was an unwritten rule in some states. In some states it was a written rule. Basically, you get females into leadership where, Okay, yeah, there may be 9 other people there that are male, but you have at least 1 female. And then eventually the goal is you get more. But when I look at leadership across the country, it's a lot of men who failed to get other men elected. And quite frankly, when I look at Florida, and I always think it's funny when Democrats will, and this is sort of a polling thing, Democrats will say, well, Democrats in House districts got 9 million more votes. So clearly it's a gerrymandering problem. No, it's the fact that Republicans don't have candidates in a lot of these places. Now, yes, Republican runs against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The Republican's going to lose. But you need to have a Republican there. Maybe not the same Republican who has lost the last 4 elections. But you need to have a Republican there to espouse views that the Democrats that are in that district, who are in the majority, who are going to elect their person, don't always hear. And maybe if you get some people out there who are like, yeah, you're not going to win, but at least you're talking about our issues, and there may be other seats down the line, but more importantly, they may help you with getting more governorships and getting different, Senate people and blah, 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 to help up the margins, then yes, you get those votes. And maybe, just maybe, you get a random upset, right? The Democrats win a seat in South Carolina they have not held since Jim Crow laws were abolished, right? Held by the former governor of their state. Republicans choose a bad candidate in the primary. They defeat the governor, Appalachian Trail. And the Democrats run a candidate who, they don't win the seat without a candidate. They probably didn't think they had a shot to win the candidate. They put a candidate up there. She talked about the views, and she won the office. Wow! You run a candidate everywhere, you might win an upset. But in Florida, my home state, we don't run a candidate in 22. Now that actually helped us, as it turned out, because of the problem with the or in 24, I forget the district goes. The one district that a little piece went into Broward and most of it was in Dade, because we didn't run a Republican there. Most people didn't notice that there was not most, a big minority did not notice that that the Senate race hadn't been put on the rest of the ballot. And so when Brenda Snipes screwed up, the most undervotes for Senate was from this district, and probably helped a Republican, Rick Scott, win the Senate. We didn't run a candidate in that district. We didn't run a candidate in most districts where Democrats were going to win by a long shot. And that's all over the country. That's from Harlem to Silicon Valley to Los Angeles to downtown Dallas to Chicago to South Florida to Boston. You don't run Republicans, you don't win offices. And look, you don't run young people and you don't run females in these districts. They got nothing to vote for, the people in the future. They're not going to come out to vote if they don't have something to vote for. So yeah, they're probably going to lose. But you know what? You got 50 seats, you don't have a candidate. You find 50 candidates, you might get an upset in one of them. But more importantly, the views that are going to take hold in the future are going to be because they see female faces, and they see young faces, and they see Latino faces, and they see black faces. But not in blackface. They see African-American faces. Okay? And sometimes they need to see GLB TQ faces. Because Republicans, one of the problems that Democrats have, they don't really talk about, is while they have a lot of gay members, they don't do a lot for gays and bisexuals and lesbians. They don't actually bring it up. Right? Their leadership, when it comes to the GLBQ community, is actually pretty poor on the Democratic side. In fact, they elected a bisexual woman in Arizona, and it was almost as if it was like they didn't mention it. Like, why you would not elect the first time that you elect a bisexual person to the United States Senate? That's a pretty big deal. And yeah, there'd be like a pass mode. Yeah, we elected. It wasn't like with electing female Muslims. I saw two, like they elected two. Ooh. Or Native American females. They were proud about that. But now it came to bisexuals from Arizona, a state that you don't win the presidency in, a state that had a Republican senator for a very long time. You hadn't had a Democratic senator in a decade. You didn't bring that up, that you elected a bisexual. Where Republicans, we don't even do a good job of saying when we do have a candidate who is not straight. And again, we need that diversity too. But Republicans, if you want to, demographics is death. And the states that, that were Donald Trump did surprisingly well in, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, they're all going to lose a congressman. And I said the word congressman because we don't elect women very much in these states. And the states that are going to grow, where Democrats are making inroads, Florida, which elected a female agriculture secretary, Texas, which got very blue in the U.S. House. It's still majority Republican, but not so much. North Carolina, Georgia. These states are all adding Congress representatives. They're not necessarily adding congressmen. And they're sure as heck not adding Republican congresswomen. So if demographics is death, we're dying. So if you want diversity, that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have a party that can be colorblind, but actually have people of color and actually have females. Okay. Ron Rivera, who's about to lose his job as the coach of the Carolina Panthers, he probably got the job because of the Rooney Rule, right? And the Rooney Rule, if people don't know, it's a rule in the NFL that you have to interview a minority when there's a head coaching vacancy. There's other rules too when it comes to assistant coaches. Before that rule was put in, you had like 3 African-American coaches in a league that is 70% African-American, of which 2 had ever been recycled, which means that they lost a job and got a new job. Now the rule is in there. Yes, and Ron Rivera is not black. He is Hispanic. But you have had more Hispanics and more African-Americans get jobs. More importantly, if they didn't get the first job, they got the next job. Or they got the job after that. Because you got to be in the room. Mitt Romney, when he was governor of Massachusetts, had a female problem. And this was Massachusetts' problem. Put out and be like, hey, I got these jobs to fill. Well, I don't have any female candidates. And his staff went to him and goes, well, we don't know any. And that doesn't just happen with Republicans, my friends. As Jon Stewart pointed out when he was on the Howard Stern show, when he was on his Jon Stewart show, he got blasted for not being an all-boys club. And he goes into a writer's meeting and he goes to Stephen Colbert and goes, do we have a problem with females? Anybody here? No. And he goes to Rob Riggle and then goes to the guy from The Office and then realizes, whoa, we don't have any females in this room. But we don't have any problem with females. And then goes to the hiring people and go, well, we hire out, we contract it out with these writers and there's no women in the writer guilds. And you go, wow, we really do have a female problem. We just don't realize it. Mitt Romney got the same thing. He's like, what do you mean you don't know any women, right? And he asked for the binders full of women. And that became the joke, right? But it was like an affirmative action thing. It was like, hey, find me female candidates, and if some qualify, I'm going to give them a job. Republicans, you got to do a better job at it. The biggest one is female, because we're not going to find African Americans. That's written off. Republicans have written that off. And we're doing a piss poor job of getting Hispanics to be a Republican. But if you can't get females are 52% of the population, you're not going to win too many elections. So again, like and subscribe, hate and comment. And I know this video is long because I talk a lot, but yep, that's my party. And I'll cry if I want to.